So when you hear the name MicroStrategy, you probably think of a software company, right? Well, lately, they've turned into something else, something much, much bigger. We're talking about a company making one of the most audacious bets in modern corporate history, and it's all centered on Bitcoin. Okay, let's get right into this.
Let's just start with the number that says it all, $42 billion. This isn't just some casual investment on the side. Nope, this is the massive target of a brand new capital plan that is designed to completely reshape what MicroStrategy is.
And look, don't just take my word for it. This is straight from their own filings. MicroStrategy is now calling itself the world's first Bitcoin development company. Their mission isn't just about software anymore. It's about buying and holding as much Bitcoin as possible, basically creating a way for regular investors to get exposure to Bitcoin through a stock.
So, in this explainer, here's what we're going to break down. We'll look at that huge $42 billion ambition, what they're actually asking shareholders to vote on, how they plan on getting the money, how they're getting the team on board, and finally, what the heck this all means for investors like you.
First up, let's tackle that massive number. We need to get into the details of what the company is calling their 21-21 plan.
So this isn't some vague idea. It was formally announced back in October of 2024, and they put a clear 3-year timeline on it. This is a very real, very structured corporate strategy with a hard financial target. The goal? Aggressively, and I mean aggressively, expand their Bitcoin stash.
So the big question is, where does $42 billion even come from? Well, the plan is actually pretty straightforward. It's split right down the middle. They're aiming to raise $21 billion by selling new shares of the company. That's the equity part. And the other $21 billion, that's going to come from things like issuing debt or convertible notes. It's a two-pronged attack to get as much capital as possible.
Okay, so you can't just decide one day to raise $42 billion without getting some permission slips signed. A plan this big requires some major changes to the company's structure, and for that, MicroStrategy needs a big thumbs up from its shareholders. And that brings us to their special meeting.
Now, all this info we're talking about comes from something called a proxy statement. You know, think of it like an official invitation to a really important party. It's the document where the company lays out exactly what it wants to do and asks shareholders to cast their votes. In this case, it's for a special meeting on January 21st, 2025, where these huge decisions get made.
When you boil it all down, the proxy statement has 3 key proposals. The first 2 are about getting permission to issue way more shares of stock. The third one is about updating how they pay their top brass. We're going to focus mostly on numbers 1 and 3 because they're absolutely central to this whole strategy.
All right, let's dig into what is easily the most mind-blowing part of this plan, getting the green light to issue a truly staggering number of new shares.
Okay, get ready for this. MicroStrategy is asking its shareholders to approve an increase in their authorized stock from 330 million shares to over 10 billion shares. I mean, just let that sink in. That is a more than 30-fold increase. This isn't just adding more fuel to the fire. This is like building a whole fleet of oil tankers. It's insane.
And they're not shy about why they need all this firepower. The number 1 reason, right at the top of the list, is to fund their Bitcoin acquisition strategy. Sure, it also gives them flexibility for other stuff, corporate needs, employee pay, but make no mistake, the main reason for this giant new engine is to buy more Bitcoin.
So if you've got a strategy this crazy and this new, you need a very specialized team to run the show. And that brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, making sure the leadership is set up and motivated to actually pull this whole thing off. And to do that, MicroStrategy recently brought on 3 new heavy hitters to its board: Brian Brooks, Jane Deitza, and Greg Winiarski. What do they all have in common? They are experts in digital assets, capital markets, and the regulatory stuff that comes with it. Basically, the exact skill set you'd want for a Bitcoin-first company. So how do you get these kinds of experts to sign on for such a wild ride? Well, that's what Proposal 3 is all about.
They're changing the equity plan to make sure the board is compensated properly for what the company itself calls the novel nature of its Bitcoin strategy. It's all about making sure everyone is rowing in the same direction.
Okay, so we've looked at the plan, the proposals, the people. Let's pull the camera back and ask the big question. What does this all really truly mean for the company and for anyone invested in it?
At its core, this whole thing is about creating a massive, flexible toolkit, a giant war chest, really. By getting approval for billions of new shares right now, MicroStrategy gives itself the power to act fast and buy up Bitcoin whenever they think the price is right, without having to run back to shareholders for permission every single time.
But, as with everything in life, right, there's a catch. There's no such thing as a free lunch. For the people who already own shares, giving the company this much power comes with a pretty big potential trade-off.
And that trade-off is called dilution. It's pretty simple, really. When a company prints billions of new shares, each of the old shares now represents a smaller and smaller piece of the total pie. It's just like cutting a pizza into more and more slices. Everybody's slice gets a little bit smaller. And that is the key risk shareholders have to weigh. And that brings us to the absolute heart of MicroStrategy's bet. They are wagering everything on the idea that the value they create by buying all this Bitcoin will grow so much, so fast, that it'll totally dwarf the effect of that dilution. They believe the pizza itself is going to get so massive that even your smaller slice will be worth way, way more in the end.
Hey, if you're finding this deep dive useful for making sense of the crypto world, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who'd find it interesting, and make sure you're subscribed to Crypto Explorer 24/7. We'd love to have you along for the ride for more explainers just like this one.
So we're left with this final fascinating question. Is MicroStrategy pulling off a genius move to become the world's most important Bitcoin company, perfectly positioned for the future? Or are we watching a public company take the single biggest, most mind-boggling risk in corporate history? Only time is going to tell.